In late September 2025, Antananarivo's streets erupted, not over politics, but over the collapse of basic services. Chronic blackouts and water shortages became the breaking point for a generation already burdened by hardship. For Madagascar's youth, endless power cuts weren't just an inconvenience. They were a barrier to education, work, and hope. Frustration spread online, with young people sharing videos of dark streets and empty taps, fueling a digital groundswell. What started as scattered complaints quickly became a unified call for change. The message was simple. The government had failed at the most basic level. Small, spontaneous gatherings organized through social media soon swelled into the largest protests in years. The youth, tired of waiting for solutions, took to the streets demanding dignity and a future that didn't vanish with the lights. This was more than a protest about utilities. It was a demand for a functioning state and a chance at a better life. Tens of thousands, mostly under 30, marched through Antananarivo in black, mourning their nation's decline. Their chants demanded President Rajoelina's resignation, blaming him for years of neglect and corruption. Inspired by global youth movements, they used TikTok, X, and Telegram to organize, bypassing traditional media and outpacing authorities. Protesters waved adapted flags from other youth uprisings, signaling solidarity with a worldwide demand for better governance. Their demands went beyond leadership change. They called for an end to corruption and for real transparency. This was not chaos, but a focused, strategic movement by a generation raised amid instability and determined to shape a new future. The protests united diverse backgrounds under a single cause: accountability and hope. Madagascar's youth had found their voice, and the world was watching. The government's response was swift and harsh. Security forces flooded the streets, escalating from containment to confrontation. Tear gas and rubber bullets turned peaceful marches into chaos, but only hardened the protesters' resolve. A dusk-to-dawn curfew was imposed, but the unrest continued. The UN reported at least 22 dead and over 100 injured, attributing most casualties to state violence. The government disputed these numbers, calling them misinformation, deepening public mistrust. Competing narratives emerged, but for families of victims, the pain was undeniable. The crackdown transformed a political crisis into a human tragedy, drawing international condemnation. For many, the government's denial felt like a refusal to acknowledge the suffering on the streets. Under mounting pressure, President Rajoelina dissolved his government after 3 days of relentless protest. In a televised address, he apologized for the failures that sparked the uprising and promised a new beginning. He called for open applications for a new prime minister, aiming to bring fresh faces into leadership. Rajoelina also pledged direct dialogue with the youth, recognizing their role as the movement's driving force. The move was a gamble, an attempt to regain control and placate the streets. Many saw it as a cosmetic change, not a real solution to deep-rooted corruption and mismanagement. The president's future now depended on whether his promises would lead to genuine reform. For the youth, the fight was no longer just about cabinet reshuffles. It was about systemic change. The question remained, would this be enough to satisfy a generation demanding more? Madagascar's Youth Uprising is part of a long tradition of protest, but this time the digital generation is leading the charge. Connected and globally aware, they refuse to accept a future defined by poverty and broken promises. The president's concessions may calm tensions for now, but the youth are watching closely for real change. Their movement is a fundamental rejection of the failures of the past and a demand for a new era. Whether this moment sparks lasting reform or another cycle of crisis depends on what happens next. The world is watching as Madagascar's youth hold their leaders to account. September 2025 may be remembered as the turning point when a generation refused to be silent. The future of the Great Red Island now rests in the hands of those who dared to demand more.